Actually, because he's not on our Sangha night team, so you may not have heard a talk from him. And also, just to say that you may be thinking, aren't we getting on with some meditation now? Because that's what we usually do, which is true, but we're not going to. We've actually flipped the evening, so we're going to have talk first, and then meditation second, and see what that's like. We're just sort of experimenting with the evening. So. Yeah, but just to introduce Arthapriya a little bit before he gets going with our next talk title in the series, which I think is Stirring the Depths Part 2, isn't it? Mm. Obviously needs 2 shots to stir the depths. But Arthapriya has recently stepped in as our chair, the chair of the centre, which... It's quite a... he stepped in at short notice, and for which many of us are very, very grateful. Vidisaki kind of decided to withdraw after that bit, and Arthapriya has stepped into the breach. And, you may or may not know what chair involves. Do you know what chair involves?
I do, unfortunately.
You do to your cost. So, so in a way, the chair sort of ensures the spiritual vitality of the centre. So, by an act of will, Arthapriya is sitting there in his room, kind of willing us all to practice Buddhism. It's a very great effort, but obviously that's not going to work. So, kind of primarily, actually, you ensure the spiritual vitality of a community by practicing yourself, and that's very much. Arthapriya is a very dear friend of mine. He ordained me, actually. He gave me my name about 19 years ago. And when I met Arthapriya, that was one of the things that really struck me, actually, about Arthapriya, that here is someone who is learning, who is training, someone who I was very, very, very much admired, but someone in whom there's this sort of vital learning process kind of going on. Very much a man who's sort of training, who has a teacher and is sort of is, I suppose, a disciple, kind of training in that sort of way. And that's very central to what a chair can't sort of encourage anyone else to practice unless you're doing it themselves. So that's something that I've seen in Arthapriya over years. Ordained for 35 years, something like that. Yeah. So anyway, just a little bit of introduction because Arthapriya is not on the team, so I wanted to introduce him a bit. But I won't say any more because I'll take time from his talk, which he won't be very happy about, I think. So over to Arthapriya.
Thank you. So, a very warm welcome to Sangha evening, and a very warm welcome to people on Zoom who I believe are coming over from the Transform Your Life course. I think you're joining us for the first time tonight, so big welcome to you. So I'm going to start in a kind of roundabout way. One of the things we like to do in my community, I live in a men's community just round the corner, Buddhist community. One of the things we like to do together is to watch David Attenborough. And I've watched David Attenborough since I was, kind of a lad. And we've been watching his thing on plants. But this isn't about that. It's well worth watching, isn't it, if you've seen it. But it's... I can't even remember the title of it. It might be to do with younger kind of animals. And the scene is set in Greenland. And you've got these really stark cliffs going up. Not a shred of grass or anything on them, just sheer cliff going up and up and up. And as the camera pans upwards, you see in this unlikely place, not eagles, but geese. These 2 geese have made their nest on this kind of pillar of rock. And they've made it there because their chicks won't be snatched by kind of predators. So we're watching this, and I don't know about the community members, but I was kind of wondering, how are the chicks going to get down? And I had it in my mind that somehow the parent chicks would carry them down. What a ridiculous thing to, think. And then it dawned on me that what was going to happen is that the chicks would need to drop off the edge. So first of all, the father bird takes off, and he's flying around the edge of the nest, encouraging the chicks. And one brave chick sort of moves towards the edge, but doesn't go over. And it's not until the mother goose that they're more strongly bonded to flies off and leaves these, 5 or 6 chicks in this precarious sort of position, that they start to edge towards the edge. And then we're by this time we're kind of on the edge of the sofa, and then they've got these tiny little wings, so there's no possibility of them sort of gliding down. The first one goes over. And the first one kind of drops, and then as he's dropping, she's dropping, they hit the rock. Their tummy hits the rock, and then they bounce down, and they fall and they fall and they fall, and you don't know, it doesn't look very hopeful, but there they are, they've made it, and slowly, one by one, the chicks go over. Some of them disappear. Some of them, a couple of them, I think, are killed coming down. And in a way, you know that they can do it because their parents must have done it as well. That's why they were able to kind of raise the chicks. And some of them are slightly kind of damaged, and they kind of limp towards their kind of parents. But then they are down. And no doubt another challenge is going to happen once they've reached the floor of the valley. But the height in which these chicks throw themselves over, trusting their parents, and down they go, came to me as I was just having a little rest before coming over. That kind of image came to me. And it's an image that maybe I'll come back to kind of in the talk, because it's an image of life and death. It's an image, in a way, for the position that we are in, whether we know it or not. We are nested, we might feel quite comfortable where we are, but sooner or later we will be called to clamber over the edge. I'll come back to the image, I think. You'll see the relevance or not. Or maybe it's just a nice story. So tonight I want to begin by saying a little bit, a little bit of not a recap, because I don't think we've covered this, but this is an exploration of Shantideva's Bodhicaryavatara. That's quite a long Sanskrit word, Bodhicaryavatara. And it can be translated as the path to awakening. But it can also be translated as the Bodhisattva's guide to awakening. The Bodhisattva's guide to awakening. So a little bit about Shantideva. Shantideva lived, I think, in the 8th century in India. And he didn't write, he recited this. This is a long Sanskrit poem that has been translated into English. And it's about the various stages and challenges that you need to undergo if you want to gain liberation for all beings. Yeah. It's a little bit like that kind of that journey, down the cliff, if you like. Shantideva says in no uncertain terms, we are going to die, and what are we going to do in the meantime? Is our life going to be meaningful in the meantime? And what will make our life truly meaningful? So, he says what will make your life truly meaningful is to live the Bodhisattva life. So what is a Bodhisattva? So a Bodhisattva is a being, man, woman. It can also be an archetypal being, but it can be a human being, and there are various degrees of them. There are novice bodhisattvas. You might think of yourself as a novice bodhisattva, and then there are bodhisattvas who have been on the path for a long time. And a bodhisattva is someone who is seeking enlightenment not just for themselves, but for all beings. They see with their spiritual vision that you can't cut yourself out of the web of life and just look after yourself. That's not how life is. They see that their enlightenment is tied up with the lives of all other beings. An image sometimes is used that the bodhisattva is like somebody on a shipwreck who has got into the lifeboat, and all around him, still in the water, are living beings in danger of drowning. He's got into the lifeboat. Maybe he or she is safe. What are they going to do? Well, what the Bodhisattva does is to turn their energy into getting as many beings as possible into the boat with them. And the more people in the boat, the more people can be saved and rescued. Shantideva says in his book to remember that you are in the water. You are not in the boat, most likely. So the fact that you might think of yourself as a Buddhist or not, but if you think of yourself as a Buddhist, that doesn't mean you've gotten there. Buddhism is a training. Being a Buddhist is a kind of a process. So the Bodhisattva longs for the happiness, the deep happiness of all beings. They long for the ordinary happiness of living beings too, but they know that is vulnerable. That is vulnerable to the worldly winds. It can come and go. Happiness is like that, isn't it? They want the happiness that comes from enlightenment, that comes from liberation, that comes with the ending of craving, the ending of hatred, the ending of ignorance. That is what they want for all beings. So how do they do that? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Now, in Buddhist history, and it's a long history, isn't it? 2,500 years of history. The Buddha was like the Bodhisattva I'm describing. The Buddha, it's said, when he was wondering whether the profundity of his realization could be communicated, he saw a vision, and he saw living beings like lotus flowers in this huge kind of lake. Red lotus flowers and blue lotus flowers and white lotus flowers. And some of the lotus flowers were deep in the mud. Deep in the mud at the bottom of the lake. And some were rising out of the mud, but still totally immersed in the water. And some had broken the surface and were reaching for the sun. And so he saw living beings at all different stages of development, all different stages of kind of progress. And but no matter where you were in the process, you were a lotus. You know, you had the potential, if not the conditions, to make further progress. And he saw that living beings needed help, and he dedicated his life to helping them. And over time in India, the Buddha died. The Buddha passed into what's called parinirvana. And as time went on, maybe it's just inevitable, as time went on, the ideal of working for the happiness of all beings, working for the enlightenment of all beings, including oneself, narrowed down to seeking your own enlightenment. Maybe it was just overwhelming, maybe it was just too much for their imagination to think of themselves doing that. But it narrowed down to working for their own benefit. There was a further distortion. The Sangha, the spiritual community of the Buddhist disciples, sort of split into monastics and layfolk. And at the time of the Buddha, everybody could tread the path. Everybody could tread the path. The Buddha taught the Dharma to anybody. He saw their potential, and he awoke that potential. But over the years, the lay people were seen as just supporting the monks and the nuns. Not very many nuns, but there were nuns. And they weren't really first-class Buddhists. The monks, the monastics were the first-class Buddhists. But their vision shrunk down as well. So, a number of disciples, a number of followers of the Buddha saw this and were unhappy about it. And they went back to the Buddha's example. They saw that Buddhism wasn't just what the Buddha taught. Buddhism was how the Buddha was. How the Buddha was in the world. Buddhism was how compassion is unleashed in the world. And they felt that needed to be there. It had to be there for it to be the path to awakening. And they're called the Mahayana. They're called the Great Way, the way of the Bodhisattva. And this text, Shantideva's Bodhicaryavatara, is a text that comes out of that tradition. That is a training for novice bodhisattvas, for us. And the Mahayana took a teaching that was there in the early strands, but was quite neglected. And it was called the Six Perfections. And the Six Perfections, I've written them down for you. They're only perfections when you have developed the sixth perfection, which is wisdom, transcendental wisdom. Transcendental wisdom is not to do with knowledge. It's not to do with finding out something about. It's immediate. It's unmediated. It's the direct knowing of things as they really are. Not how we would like them to be, but how they really are. And to be here, I think you have to have a little glimpse of that. I think to be interested in the spiritual life at all, something in you has to say, ordinary life isn't enough. There's something missing. As good as it might be, and sometimes it's not good, is it? Sometimes it's quite kind of, bad. Sometimes there's a lot of suffering in life. But no matter how it is, you feel there is something missing. There's a deeper orientation that is not there in my life. The world will tell you that career, money, material things, holidays abroad, whatever it is, will make you happy. And I remember an American order member telling me that he was one of the few people he knew that had realized the American dream. This is a Buddhist who's a millionaire. And he'd realized the American dream, and he knew firsthand it wasn't enough. And that's what got him to the Buddhist Center. But he said so many Americans, because they don't get there, they are still tantalized, fascinated by the American dream. He got there, he saw that it was flawed. How could he be happy when there was so much kind of unhappiness around him? It didn't make him more buoyant. It didn't make him a better friend because he got a lot of money and a lot of material things. So yes, you are probably here because you have a glimpse, maybe more, that life holds something more than what mundane existence tells you that it does. So I like to think of the six perfections as a perfecting. So they are generosity, ethics, patience, energy, meditation, and wisdom. And I'm going to be talking about energy particularly kind of tonight. But let me just pull one of them out. Generosity, giving. Giving is not just the beginning of the Dharma life. It goes deep. It goes really deep. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm asked to do something, even when I'm asked to give a talk, sometimes the visceral response is no. You know, would you like to contribute money? No. You know. But these days, I don't stay with that because there's another response. That used to be no. I'd say no, and that would be another story. But when you're around Buddhists, you can't do that because they're so generous, and so that's a kind of the novice giving, the novice level of giving. You give. Might be money, might be energy, might be time. But as you develop this kind of understanding, you realise that the whole idea of your things, your money, your time, there's something wrong about that. There's something kind of limited about that. You see that we don't exist as atomized and separate and independent beings. We are part of the web of life. We are part of all things. And to make any progress in Dharma life, in Buddhist life, you need other people. You need people who are further developed than you. You need people, your peers. Oh, they're so valuable, kind of your peers. And you also need people who are less experienced than you, just so you can share. And as you share, what you know is matured. It's pulled out of you. Yeah. So generosity, in the end, you see through fixed identity. Your energy just freely flows to wherever it's kind of needed. But that is some way off. It's a kind of it's a practice. Sometimes the six perfections are translated as ways of transcending ourselves as we now are. So, okay, you might think I'm quite generous, I'm quite ethical, I'm quite patient. Great, that's great, as a start. But the more you develop those things, the more, the deeper your connections will be with others, the more benefit you will be to the world. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Kamalamati, shame she's not here tonight, but Kamalamati gave a very engaging talk about the perfection of patience, forbearance. We heard about her struggles with her brother, didn't we? It's very often either a partner or somebody in our family, or some loved one who is the most testing person. They probably think the same of us as well. And she was talking about how her practice of Buddhism has started to change that relationship. Yet she still falls into the hole sometimes. She still lets him get to her sometimes. But it's not the end of it. Like my visceral no is not the end of the matter. Her getting irritated sometimes is not the end of the matter. Tonight I'm going to talk about energy. Now, the most famous image of the Buddha must be, mustn't it? This image, the Buddha sitting there, cross-legged, hands folded in his lap, the eyes half shut, a beautiful smile playing on his lips. And it's trying to portray the moment of enlightenment, or the moment after enlightenment, maybe. It's a very, very kind of peaceful image. Now that can lead to misunderstandings. You can think that is Buddhism. That is what the Buddha is. Now let me show you another image. So this, I don't know whether you can see it on Zoom, maybe Jeremy will tell me, but this is an image of Vajrapani. Yeah? And Vajrapani looks like a demonic form. And when I first saw an image of Vajrapani when I was a newcomer, I thought, that's the Buddhist devil. But no, this is a Bodhisattva. And this is an aspect of enlightenment. This is the kind of energy you need to break through. And in a way, this image portrays that moment of breaking through out of the conditioned, out of the eggshell, if you like, of the conditioned, into the unlimited, into the freedom, into the absolute compassion and transcendental wisdom of enlightenment. And he's roaring, he's surrounded by flames. He's holding the thunderbolt, the Vajra, as he breaks through. And he's there to encourage us. And the Tibetan tradition, Japanese tradition too, has a lot of these kind of semi-wrathful and wrathful forms. And they are compassionate forms. They look as if they might kind of get hold of you and murder you. It's more about destroying ignorance, helping you to do that, giving you the impetus and courage to break through. And in the Tibetan tradition, people are not frightened by these images. These are seen as protectors, protectors of the Sangha, protectors of practitioners, protectors of the Dharma. And by contemplating such figures, you feel the energy kind of stirred up. So these two figures, the sitting Buddha, Vajrapani, they're the same. They're the same. We're just looking at that experience from two different kind of aspects. So let me put this on the shrine. With his image, the Vajra. So we've got energy. You might not always feel like it. Coming to the class, just before you get here, you might think, oh no, just too tired. Not tired enough to not watch Netflix, but too tired to get over here. Guilty. And it's really interesting the way we talk to ourselves, isn't it? When you're setting up a meditation practice, I remember this so well from setting up a meditation practice myself, and I still get it from time to time. The alarm goes off in the morning, and I think, getting up to meditate, I think, oh no, I just feel kind of worn out, and maybe just a bit more straight. I'll do it later, and if I do it later in the day, usually it gets knocked back to the next morning. So be careful how you think. Be careful what you say to yourself. The Buddha said that thoughts are actions. You are and I am as we are and I am because of the way that we have acted in the past, because of where our energy has gone. And our energy has gone where we have, in a way, let it go. And we are the result of that. But, this is the good news, the Buddha said that we're not fixed, we're not finished, we are in process, we can change. And But when we come to change, we encounter habits, don't we? We encounter habit energy. Let me just read you something. This isn't from a Buddhist, this is from Emerson, I think. And you're probably familiar with this phrase, or some of you will be familiar. Sow a thought, and you reap an action. Sow an action, and you reap a habit. Sow a habit, and you reap a character. Sow a character, and you reap a destiny. Now, Buddhism doesn't believe in destiny, doesn't believe in kind of fate. But it doesn't underestimate the strength of our habits. If you've ever given up something, I don't know, if you've ever given up things like smoking, I used to be a smoker. You know, don't you? Those of you, nod if you've ever given up smoking. Yeah? So you know how hard that can be. And when you tackle a habit like that, you realise that your self isn't a self, it's several selves. And there is a self that is determined to give up smoking. And then later on, the self that is determined to carry on smoking kind of emerges. And I used to say things to myself like, I should be free to smoke if I want to. If you are caught by an addiction, you are not free to smoke. You are addicted to smoke. So it was a complete rationalisation. And I must have given up and started smoking, several times. And I have to confess to you that I did smoke as an order member. I smoked 1 cigarette a day. And I remember going on a retreat with a friend of mine who wasn't an order member, who smoked as well. And after the puja, we went and we had our cigarette. And he said to me one night, your life is about helping others, isn't it? I should have known that I was about to walk into a trap. And I said, yeah, it is. And he said, well, in that case, you need to live for as long as possible, don't you? If you're going to benefit other people, you need to live as long as possible. And I said, yes. And he said, well, how does this fit into it? How does smoking fit into it? And I said, well, I couldn't think. So that night we both gave up. And I couldn't give up for myself. I had to give up for a bigger purpose. I gave up because I wanted to be of benefit to other people. So people like you are the reason. Thank you for helping me do that. And I think to change yourself, to galvanise your energy, to change yourself, you won't do that unless you've got a bigger purpose in life. That there is something in your life that is bigger than you. And then that will help you to change. And you need conditions around you. That usually means people. People who've been there or who are there, working in the same territory, who can benefit you from their empathy sometimes, their encouragement, their exhortation, the odd kick of the bum, that we all need time to time. Yeah. So we can change, but you need a bigger purpose and you need conditions around you. And you need to be removing yourself as much as possible from those conditions that support the habit you want to get away from. If you are around cynical people all the time, it goes in. It just seeps into the skin, cynicism. And it's poison. It's like a real toxin, And it's hard. As you get older, it's much easier to get cynical about kind of life. And very often the cynics of later years are the naive idealists of earlier years. So Buddhism isn't about naive idealism. Buddhism is about idealism that is tested in the fire. Vajrapani, tested in the fire of experience. Now I want to tell you another story. I'm running out of time, aren't I? I want to tell you. What time do I need to? Groups 8. 8. Okay, right. I want to tell you a story of a an adventure I had in Manchester. We were doing really well in Manchester. We got a lovely centre, beautifully decorated, big semi-detached house, but we had a problem. And that problem was that we had too many people coming along to the centre. It wasn't a problem, it was, great. But we had to turn people away. That was the problem. So the trustees, the order members who were running it, said we need to find somewhere bigger. And it had been our dream to get a centre right in the middle of Manchester. So we went into town one afternoon and we parked in the Arndale car park, multi-storey, horrible place, the Arndale. But it was a significant place because as we locked the car, we looked out over the city and we saw a to let or for sale sign on this big warehouse. And we went and had a look at it. And it was quite dilapidated. It was big, but it was dilapidated. But we took down the number. And we had a look at a number of other warehouses because it had to be big. And nothing was suitable. But we rang the agent and we had a look around this place. And it was a bit of a wreck. It got dry rot and wet rot. But it was big and it was cheap. And we decided, not then and there, but we decided that we would have it. We would take it, and shortage of money, we would refurbish it. But that meant selling our beautiful centre in Chiltern. And the Sangha were a bit, some of the Sangha were steady on, but we decided to do it. And when we got it, and Virya, sitting over there, was one of the people who were involved in the refurbishment of it. When we got it, I don't know what they'd done to it, but it was more dilapidated than when we had a look around it. More work needed to be done. It was going to cost so much more money than we'd got from the sale of our house. But we began, and I learned how to plaster. I was chairman of the centre and I learned how to plaster. And it's heavy work plastering if you've ever done it. And there were teams of women stripping back years and years of paint on the woodwork and revealing this red wood. Fantastic wood. There were guys knocking things down. Everybody wanted to go on the sledgehammer, knocking partitions down. And over the weeks and the first months, it looked worse and worse as we were stripping it back. It happens. And you can feel about yourself like that sometimes when you start on the Buddhist path. You can feel how little metta you've got, how unmindful you are. It's a little bit like an analogy with a building. But as you carry on, something else happens. And the local council, the city council, would bring visitors round to see us sometimes because they were so impressed at this faith community, us, doing this work ourselves. We sandblasted all the walls. It was hard work. I was there on Christmas Day once on my own, shoveling wet sand into a bag and feeling really, really sorry for myself. Anyway, gradually, the beauty started to come out of the building. And the beauty started coming out of the workers. Many of these people I'd only met over coffee, and now I was seeing them working at the Buddhist Centre, working at something bigger than themselves to give, in a way, to the world, And to begin with, we were really boundary. People said, I'm not working beyond 5 and I'm not working at the weekend. At the end, we were working until 2 in the morning. We were working the weekends. You had to send people home. They didn't want to stop. A few days before we were due to open, the IRA exploded the bomb in Manchester. And we thought that had damaged the building, but it didn't damage the building. It did a lot of damage in Manchester, but it didn't damage the building. And you can go and see it. You can go and see this kind of beautiful building in Manchester. And when you go in, just recall this, just remember, it was the Sangha It was ordinary men and women coming from their day jobs. Sometimes we had people working all day, but some people came from their day jobs to get dirty in the building as a gift to the Sangha and a gift to the world. So energy was really kind of unleashed by that. So many people got involved, wandered in from the street sometimes. What's going on? Can I help? So many people became mitras. So many people got ordained, men and women, during that time. They felt, yeah, this is me, this is what I want to do with my life. What's my advice to you? My advice to you is, if you want to really contact your energy, to integrate your energy, it needs to be gathered in. It needs a purpose. You need something that's bigger than you in order to hold that. Get involved. Holding back. You can't galvanize those energies. So I'm not proselytizing, but I'm just saying that whatever project you are involved with, give yourself to it. Don't hold your energy back. A magic happens when you give yourself to the project. The project draws it out of you. The project itself lightens up. It's wonderful. It's transformational. That's why energy is so important in life. I love this little postcard I saw once, an Australian postcard that said, Ralph wanted to change the world, but he didn't want to get off the couch. You've got to get off the couch. There's no lazy person's way to enlightenment. There really isn't. Relaxation plays a part, but energy plays a part too. Sometimes that is refined energy. Sometimes that is getting the lump hammer out. Sometimes that is kind of getting your shoulders to the wheel. Sometimes in meditation, it's not that at all. It's quite subtle. It's quite refined. You need to learn how to use your energy. We're going to be looking a little bit at this in the meditation, I think. Looking at our energy. I've run out of time. I could say more, but I've run out of time. So thank you very much. That's the perfection of energy.